On this Tuesday night, chilling moments as a gunman goes on a shooting spree at a popular Mexican archaeological site.
We knew they were being shot, so we ran.
The Canadians caught in the crossfire and what police are revealing about the gunman. Alberta's separation slopaganda.
And every day we work hard.
The AI-generated disinformation and how it's promoting lies and division. Sky-high frustration.
This is not fair!
Get us home!
Why some travelers want to take WestJet to court. Plus, celebrations fit for the Queen.
God bless you, darling Mama.
Honoring Her Majesty on what would have been her 100th birthday.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Mexico's president has called for security to be stepped up at popular archaeological sites in that country after a shooting that killed a Canadian woman and injured at least 13 other tourists. It happened Monday at the Pyramid of the Moon, an ancient site near Mexico City. Witnesses say the 27-year-old Mexican gunman who had climbed partway up the pyramid began firing on people before turning the gun on himself. Violence at Mexican tourists and cultural sites is extremely rare, but for those caught in this shooting, it was terrifying. Jillian Piper has our top story tonight.
Panicked tourists, young and old, scrambling to survive at one of Mexico's most popular destinations. Chaos at the Teotihuacán pyramids when this 27-year-old man opened fire. Authorities say Mexican national Julio Cesar Hasso Ramirez had a firearm, knife, and a backpack with materials apparently related to a deadly shooting in the U.S. in 1999, when he shot and killed a Canadian woman in a planned rampage Monday before killing himself.
It was horrible. It was just unbelievable.
Canadian tourist Barb Welsh saw the whole thing.
The minute we saw the people falling, it was like a waterfall. They were just coming down, rolling, falling. We knew they were being shot, so we ran.
I don't know why he stopped with one person. Thank God he did.
American actor Barak Hardley also saw the violence up close and was amazed there were not more casualties.
Seeing all the people laying there was horrific. They were all playing dead, and you could see their legs dangling over.
The Canadian killed has not been identified, but Mexican authorities say she died of a gunshot wound that went through her leg and landed in her chest. The Prime Minister offering condolences.
Our hearts go out to the family and friends of the individual who was tragically killed. It's a terrible circumstance.
13 other people were injured, 7 of them suffering from gunshot wounds, including another Canadian. The youngest victims were a 13-year-old and a 6-year-old boy. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has promised a full investigation, and the Foreign Affairs Minister says she will be getting regular updates.
I will leave no stone unturned in ensuring that Canadians are supported abroad.
Authorities do not yet know the shooter's motive, only saying that it was a pre-planned attack and that the suspect had visited the historic site several times before the incident. Donna?
All right, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thank you. The U.S. president has decided to buy himself more time with Iran. Donald Trump has backed off from his threat to escalate the war the U.S. and Israel started with Iran. He's announced he's extending the ceasefire that was about to expire. It's another reversal for Trump, who just this morning said he was ready to start bombing again. Jackson Prosco is following developments for us. Jackson, bring us up to speed.
And Donna, this really came down to the wire, happening just hours before the agreement was set to expire. President Donald Trump announced he will extend the ceasefire now for an unknown period of time. In a post on social media, he wrote, quote, "We have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and in all other respects remain ready and able, and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted." Now, throughout the day, it became clear that the next round of peace talks in Pakistan was simply not going to happen. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance postponed his trip to the region along with Trump's top envoys, and Iran had simply not decided whether or not they were going to go. Iran's position is that the U.S. blockade of its ports is a violation of the ceasefire, and so as long as it's in place, there's nothing for them to talk about. The American position is that Iran has violated the ceasefire, and President Trump says he's ready to resume bombing if there is no deal reached. Donna?
And Jackson, Iran has been talking tough too and says it has a lot of leverage because of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. What is Iran signaling tonight?
You know, there are so many unknowns here, including whether Trump's proposal will ultimately be acceptable to Iran, given that Trump did not put any sort of deadline on the length of the pause here. In his post, Trump called the government of Iran, quote, seriously fractured, and he seemed to be implying that there are different groups making different demands here. In fact, just this morning, he again reiterated that threat to start bombing if Iran did not acquiesce to his demands. And yes, as you point out, none of this solves the more immediate problem of reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Iran still holds all the cards here, the biggest one being that chokehold on global oil supplies. And there's the real risk, Donna, that this flares right back up into open conflict before there's actually any peace agreed to.
All right, Jackson Prosco in Washington, thanks for the update. Canada's Prime Minister has chosen a new group of people to advise the government on the economic relationship between the U.S. and Canada. It includes former politicians, including Conservatives, and business and labor leaders. And it replaces a similar committee formed by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray reports on what they'll be called upon to do as the review of the existing trade agreement between Canada, the U.S. and Mexico gets underway.
What do you want your Trade Council to accomplish?
Another part of Canada's trade team is now clear, with the Prime Minister revamping his advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations.
It's a diverse group, leaders from the union movement, experts in industry, and CEOs in finance and across the economy.
Bay Street well represented with 8 CEOs, including from TC Energy, steel company Dofasco, and dairy giant AgroPure. All sectors that are expected to be targets in negotiations. Former Cabinet Minister Ralph Goodale, the only Liberal appointed.
We're all in this together. We have to have a truly genuine Team Canada effort here.
To do that, 3 Conservatives have been added. Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest, Harper-era Cabinet Minister Lisa Raitt, and former party leader Erin O'Toole, included to help strike a nonpartisan approach.
What do you think of Erin O'Toole being on this council?
It's great. At the end of the day, though, what we need is action.
But Conservative inclusion didn't impress Pierre Poilievre, who's unhappy with the Prime Minister's trade strategy.
He's done absolutely nothing on this file in the last year other than use it to stoke fear and distract from his catastrophic failings here at home.
Canada-U.S.-Mexico free trade talks are supposed to be wrapped up by July 1st, but Canada hasn't even started negotiations. Not a concern for the government.
It's really important, I think, to focus on getting a comprehensive solution, not necessarily a fast solution.
A major contrast with the Mexicans, who expect formal talks with the U.S. will start on May 25th.
We are up against a president who thinks in some way that he doesn't need Canada. So part of our job will be showing him, obviously, that he does, and that we have strength and that we have leverage.
The group's first meeting with Carney is set for April 27th, but how often they'll speak with the Prime Minister isn't clear, after Carney barely met with the previous council that he inherited from Justin Trudeau. Donna?
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. It's not easy deciphering what's authentic online these days, and now the Canadian Digital Media Research Network is sounding the alarm about multiple YouTube channels. They post videos generated by AI and contain frequent and obvious lies, drawing on authentic news sources but twisting the facts, spreading misinformation and disinformation about the Alberta separatist movement and exploiting political divisions. The roughly 20 accounts have attracted more than 40 million views, and as Heather Yourex-West explains, it's unclear who is behind them.
You have unprecedented momentum and a powerful demand for change.
In a video titled "Alberta Patriots Crush 1 Million Signatures," a YouTuber known as the Canadian Reporter repurposes mainstream media clips.
They say they have reached the required number of signatures.
And politician sound bites to promote ideas like Alberta separatism and annexation to the U.S.
My name is Andrew.
The channel has 90,000 subscribers, but researchers believe this YouTuber and others like him aren't who they say they are.
There are so many tells that this is inauthentic content.
An analysis by the Media Ecosystem Observatory has connected a number of YouTube accounts like these, finding striking patterns between them. Hosts follow similar scripts, and there are indications of AI. But who's behind the network? Researchers don't know.
Ideally, when you sound the alarm on something like this and you identify a network like this, you want to know who's behind it. In this case, we're not able to.
Those angry Albertans, they'll calm down.
This University of Calgary researcher has been following the network too.
We've known this network for a year and a half. It has morphed in time.
I know we don't know who is behind this network, but who is most likely to be behind this network in your mind?
My money is on a foreign actor. A foreign actor has like the interest to do that, trying to increase tension in Canada and tension within Canada, between Canada and the United States. It benefits Russia, it benefits China.
Global News reached out to an email address listed on the Canadian Reporter YouTube channel, but received no response. Stay Free Alberta, the group promoting Alberta separatism, says they are not involved.
We're aware of these videos, obviously, but they don't help us. They're not promoted by us. They're designed to be detrimental to our movement.
Researchers hope their findings help people consume online information with a more critical eye, as Albertans and Canadians navigate an increasingly divisive time. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
An extraordinary trial is underway in El Salvador. Nearly 500 gang members accused of murders, drug and arms trafficking, and disappearances are going on trial together. The mass trial began via video link from prison. The Attorney General's office says the accused men are suspected of more than 47,000 crimes, including 29,000 murders. The gang is accused of killing 87 people in a single weekend alone in March of 2022. El Salvador's president has declared war on gangs, which he says have controlled 80% of Salvadoran territory. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing more scrutiny over his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as British ambassador to the U.S. Today, a former senior civil servant who was fired last week testified at a parliamentary committee. Ollie Robbins says he faced pressure from the Prime Minister's office to fast-track Mandelson's appointment, despite concerns raised during the vetting process, including Mandelson's known ties to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
I'm afraid what that translated into for my team in the Foreign Office, and certainly the handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post, was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Starmer blamed Foreign Ministry officials, saying they failed to tell him Mandelson had failed the vetting process. Canada's mission to join the space race. Coming up, what the federal government is doing to try to spur homegrown rocket launches. Another first for NASA's Curiosity rover. It has found organic molecules never seen before on Mars. They were discovered in a rock that formed in a dried lake bed near the equator. Organic compounds form the structural basis of all life on Earth. It's unclear if these molecules on Mars were created by biologic or geologic processes. Scientists are still trying to figure out whether the red planet ever harbored life. After all the buzz around Jeremy Hansen becoming the first Canadian to orbit the moon, the federal government is working to turn some of that momentum into policy. It's introducing a bill to lay the groundwork for a Canadian space launch industry. As Mike Armstrong explains, it's a push to end Canada's reliance on other nations to go to orbit.
Canadian company Nord Space has the plan in place. Launch from Newfoundland and send satellites into low Earth orbit. It hopes to conduct a first suborbital launch, sort of a proof of concept, next month.
Our orbital vehicle, which is where the vast majority of our efforts are being allocated, the initial launch is expected for 2028.
Right now, Canada is in fact the only G7 country without the ability to launch satellites. Ottawa is hoping to close that gap so Canadian companies can stop hitching rides with other countries. To do that, it wants to set up the regulation and oversight for what is a growing industry.
Canada has reached the moon, but still lacks its own way, its own sovereign way to space.
Now, Canada has a long history with space, from being the second country with a satellite in orbit, to Canadarm, to Jeremy Hansen's trip around the moon just this month. But space is also becoming more and more important to daily life. Navigation, defense, financial transactions, even forest fire detection, all rely on satellites.
These are things that Canada cannot permit itself to fall behind on.
To prevent that, Ottawa is trying to promote and build a domestic space industry, but also to make sure it's done safely. Issues like permits and insurance have to be ironed out. It says the industry could be worth $40 billion by 2040 and help keep Canadian investment and experts from leaving. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Holiday havoc ahead. What some WestJet passengers say happened to them at Cancún Airport. Some WestJet passengers are ready to fight for compensation after their return from a dream holiday ran into a big snag. They say a series of flight delays left them stranded overnight at Cancún Airport in Mexico without food, water, or assistance. Heidi Petracek explains what happened and why some passengers are prepared to take the matter to court.
This is not fair. This is when more than 100 WestJet passengers in Cancun learned their March 17th flight home was canceled after what they say was a 12-hour ordeal.
It was horrible, absolutely horrible.
They had boarded the plane to head back to Toronto that afternoon, but instead of taking off,
we sat on there for 3 hours, and then finally, I'd say around 6:30, the captain came out and said that they couldn't match the flight manifest with what the airport had on record.
Back to the terminal, and that's when it all went wrong. Delay after delay after delay after delay.
Passengers showed us emails they received from WestJet, which blamed delays on, quote, an issue outside the airline's control after leaving the gate, and then on an airport facilities issue, and later crew availability.
If all other flights to that particular airport were taking off normally, but this one was not, then clearly it is WestJet's problem, not a facilities problem.
Hours passed and the airport closed for the night. The water even shut off.
There was no running water. So you couldn't flush a toilet, you couldn't, fill a water bottle, nothing.
Personnel disappeared.
They're supposed to provide communication within every half hour.
The flight was officially canceled at 2 a.m. Passengers were then rescheduled to leave more than 24 hours after their original flight time. Some bought tickets on other airlines to get home earlier.
There's people sleeping on benches, on the floor.
This week, passengers like Steve Hashi, who filed compensation claims with WestJet under federal regulations, were denied by the airline on the grounds it was out of WestJet's control. They disagree.
They took no accountability for it, no ownership, no nothing.
WestJet has acknowledged our request for information and says it's working on its response, looking into what happened. Sean Mills says he and others are prepared to take the matter to small claims court rather than going through the Canadian Transportation Agency, which has about 97,000 complaints in its queue. Donna.
All right, Heidi Petracek in Halifax, thank you. Lasting legacy next, how Queen Elizabeth II is being remembered on what would have been her 100th birthday. These blocks of ice piled up in downtown Toronto are drawing crowds. The stunt is a promo for rap superstar Drake's upcoming album called Iceman. The release date apparently will be revealed once all that ice melts. A few weeks ago, Drake also iced out his courtside seats at a Toronto Raptors game. Madonna is asking for public help after some of the vintage clothes she wore at Coachella last weekend went missing. She wore some of the same things she'd worn during her first Coachella performance 20 years ago. She's now offering a reward for the return of the vintage pieces, writing on Instagram, "These aren't just clothes, they are part of my history."
Millions will remember her for moments of national significance. Many others for a fleeting personal encounter, or for that marvellous twinkle of the eye when sharing a marmalade sandwich with Paddington Bear.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Who can forget that? King Charles is paying tribute to his mother on what would have been the Queen's 100th birthday. A number of events are being held to pay tribute to Britain's longest reigning monarch, including an exhibition at Buckingham Palace called Queen Elizabeth, Her Life in Style. It includes 300 items worn by the late Queen, including her wedding dress and many of the other colorful dresses she became known for. Redmond Shannon on the further plans unveiled today to honor the Queen.
Even after her passing, Queen Elizabeth remains the woman the King will always look up to. On the day that would have been her 100th birthday, Charles and Queen Camilla get to see what the National Memorial to Elizabeth will look like. A re-landscaped section of St James's Park close to Buckingham Palace, with a new footbridge and towering statues of Elizabeth and Prince Philip.
A few paces behind the Queen, a position that he was well accustomed to.
It will be about 2 years before we see the new bridge and statues, but the Queen's birthday milestone today involves many more tributes to her legacy.
God bless you, darling Mama.
A video message from the King noted how she touched the lives of countless people across the Commonwealth.
Much about the times we now live in, I suspect, may have troubled her deeply, but I take heart from her belief that goodness will always prevail.
At Buckingham Palace, the King hosted people born on the same day as the Queen, celebrating their own centenaries.
She just reigned through this vast span of the ages and was as authoritative and loved and respected at the end as she was at the beginning.
Appropriately, in Regent's Park, not too far away, Princess Anne dedicated a new garden to her mother, as a new charity is launched in the late monarch's name in support of UK community projects. But you won't need to travel to take part in the commemorations. This website invites anyone, anywhere, to share their memories of Elizabeth. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Mississauga Lake in Ontario. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.